I have lived for 12,000 years. I have watched stars be born, and I have watched them grow old and fade into nothing. I have flown through nebulae so beautiful that no word in any language could describe them. I knew the names of civilizations that your species will never discover because they turned to dust before your ancestors learned to walk upright. I have loved, I have lost, and by the time this story begins, I had decided that I was done with all of it. My name is Vithrakar. I am what the galaxy once called a cosmic dragon. There were thousands of us once. We shaped the currents between stars. We sang to gravity, and it listened. Our wings stretched wide enough to cast shadows on moons. We were magnificent. We were eternal. And then, one by one, we were gone. My mate Sorithiel was the last to leave me. 9,000 years ago, a wave of dying energy swept through our home nebula and took her while she slept among the stars. I felt her light go out the way you might feel your own heartbeat stop. One moment she was there. The next, the universe had a hole in it, shaped exactly like her, and nothing would ever fill it. After that, I wandered. I visited old friends from other species, ancient races, who had lived nearly as long as my kind. The Kivari, beings of light and thought, chose to fly into their own suns rather than continue without purpose. The Delvani, who were made of living crystal, simply stopped resonating and shattered where they stood. Every elder race I had ever known reached the same conclusion when the weight of time grew too heavy. They surrendered. They let go. They chose silence. I understood them. I envied them. And eventually, I decided to follow. I found Ashvale at the edge of explored space. It was a small, dry, forgotten world. Rust-colored canyons stretched across its surface like old scars. The sky looked like a bruise that never healed. Nothing of value existed there. No colonies, no outposts, no reason for anyone to visit. It was the perfect place to be forgotten. I landed in the deepest canyon I could find. I folded my wings over myself like a blanket, and I closed my eyes. I did not intend to open them again. I was not sick. I was not injured. I was simply finished. There is a kind of tiredness that has nothing to do with the body. It lives in the part of you that remembers, and it whispers that there is no one left who speaks your language, no one who knows your name, no one who would notice if you stopped breathing. That is the tiredness I carried, and I was ready to set it down. 3 days I lay there in perfect silence. 3 days of nothing but wind moving through stone. It was almost peaceful. I was almost gone. Then something fell from the sky. I heard it before I saw it. A terrible screaming of metal and fire cutting through the thin atmosphere. A ship, human-made, colonial class, tumbling end over end with smoke pouring from its hull. It struck the canyon floor about 11 kilometers from where I rested. The impact shook the ground beneath me, and dust rained down from the canyon walls. I opened one eye, and I was annoyed. I had chosen this world specifically because no one came here. I closed my eye again, and told myself it was not my problem. Whatever had crashed, the desert would swallow it soon enough. That is what deserts do. But then I heard something I had not heard in a very long time. A child crying. It was faint at first, carried on the wind like a half-remembered song. I told myself to ignore it. I told myself I was done caring about the small struggles of small creatures. I repeated this to myself several times. The crying did not stop. Hours passed. The crying faded. And then came something worse. Footsteps, small ones, not running, walking. Walking with the uneven, stubborn rhythm of a child who has decided where he is going and refuses to be told otherwise. I opened both eyes. Standing at the entrance to my canyon, covered in dust and bleeding from a small cut above his left eye, was a human boy. He could not have been more than 8 or 9 years old. His colonial jumpsuit was torn at the shoulder. He was holding a broken emergency lantern in front of him like it could protect him from anything. On his chest, stitched in faded letters, was a name, Elias. He stared at me. I waited for the fear. I waited for the screaming, the running, the collapse. I am not a small creature. My scales are dark as iron and cracked with age. My horns, 6 in total with 3 long broken, rise from my skull like the ruins of a cathedral. I am the kind of thing that makes brave soldiers lose the feeling in their legs. The boy did not scream. He did not run. He looked at me with eyes that were red from crying and heavy with exhaustion, and he said, "Are you going to eat me?" "No," I said. Are you going to help me? Also no. He sat down. Right there. Right in front of me. He pulled his knees up to his chest and wrapped his arms around them. And he said, "Then I am staying here. Because you are the only thing on this whole planet that talked back." I told him to leave. I explained, with great patience, that I was not a guardian, or a protector, or a character from one of his bedtime stories. I was something very old, and very tired, and I had come to this place to be alone. He looked at me and said, "My mom told me, you do not leave someone who is alone." I said, "Your mother is not here." His face changed. Just for a moment. A crack ran through it, like a fracture through glass. And behind it, I saw grief so raw and so enormous that it seemed impossible for such a small body to contain it. His mother had been on that shuttle. His mother was not anywhere anymore. He wiped his face with a dirty sleeve and said, very quietly, "That is why I remember what she said." I did not answer. I could not. Because somewhere deep inside me, in a place I thought had gone cold and dark 1,000 years ago, something moved. It was small. It was unwelcome. And I think it might have been shame. I did not help him that first night, but I did not chase him away. He gathered twisted branches from the cracks in the canyon walls. He tried to start a fire using the broken power cell from his lantern. It took him dozens of attempts. His hands were shaking. He was thirsty and hungry, and completely alone, on a world where no one was coming to find him. But he kept trying, and eventually, a tiny flame caught. It was the smallest, most pitiful fire I had ever seen. I once flew through the burning heart of a star. I have seen entire worlds wrapped in flame, and this boy had produced a light no bigger than his fist. But he sat beside it like he had built a castle. He warmed his hands over it like it was the most important thing in the universe. I watched him, and I thought about all the ancient races I had known. Beings of unimaginable power, who had looked at the darkness and decided they could not face it. Gods who surrendered, immortals who broke. And here sat this tiny, fragile, temporary creature, whose mother had just perished, whose world had just ended, and he was fighting the cold with a handful of sticks. I did not understand it. I still do not understand it entirely, but I could not look away. The days passed, and the boy kept talking. He talked about his mother, who had been an agricultural engineer. He talked about his father, who had passed before Elias was born, in a mining accident on a faraway moon. He talked about the colony they had been traveling to, a green world where they were supposed to start over. He gave the canyon a name, Fort Elias. On the third day, he tried to feed me. He broke his last ration bar in half and placed one piece on a rock near my jaw. "You look hungry," he said. I had not eaten in decades. I did not need food the way he did, but the sight of this starving child offering me half of everything he had left in the world was something I was not prepared for. On the fourth day, he got sick. The mineral water he had been drinking from a thin canyon stream carried trace elements that his body could not handle. He shivered and sweated, and eventually, when the cold became too much, he crawled over and pressed himself against my foreleg because I was warm. I did not move. I told myself it was because moving would require effort. I knew that was not the truth. That night, without saying a word, I shifted my breathing. I let a slow, gentle warmth spread across the canyon floor. Not fire, just heat, just enough. By morning, his fever had broken. He looked up at me with clear eyes and smiled, and I felt something I had not felt in a very, very long time. On the seventh day, he asked me why I was waiting to fade away. And for the first time in centuries, I told the truth. I told him what it means to be the last of your kind, what it feels like to carry 12,000 years of memories that no one else shares. I told him about Sorothale. I told him about the silence that followed. He listened to all of it. Then he said, "My mom said that being sad means you loved somebody. She said that is not a reason to stop. Your mother sounds like she was very wise," I said. "She was just a mom," he said. "But she was right about stuff." That same day, I felt something enter the star system. A ship. A large one. A Galactic Union search and rescue cruiser, following the automated distress signal from the crashed shuttle. They were coming for him. I told Elias. His face lit up with hope. Then he looked at me, and the hope became something else. "Are you coming?" he asked. "No." "Then I am not going." I stared at him. This boy, this starving, orphaned, half-recovered child on a dead world at the edge of nowhere, had just refused rescue. For me, for a creature he had known for 7 days. "You will not survive here, Elias. Neither will you," he said. "So at least neither of us will be alone." I looked at him for a long time. And in that silence, 12,000 years of grief met one small, stubborn, impossibly brave human truth. It is not the length of a life that gives it meaning. It is what you refuse to let go of. I had spent centuries mourning what I lost. I never once stopped to think about what I could still choose. I rose. For the first time in years, I stood. The canyon trembled. Dust fell like rain from the walls. My wings opened and filled the sky above us, wider than he could see, blocking out the pale sun. The boy stumbled backward, his eyes huge, his mouth open. But he did not run. I lowered my head. He understood. He climbed up, small hands gripping scales that were older than his entire species, and he held on. I launched from that canyon like a promise, straight up, through the thin atmosphere, into the black and the stars. The rescue cruiser saw us coming. I imagine their instruments went rather wild at the sight. A cosmic dragon was not in any first contact manual they had studied. But Elias, sitting on my neck with the wind of space, held back by the thin energy field I wrapped around him, grabbed his broken lantern, and broadcast on its short-range frequency. "This is Elias Morrow, passenger from Shuttle Cygnus 7. I have one survivor with me. He is really big. Please do not shoot." They did not shoot. That was 18 years ago. I did not go back to Ashevale. I did not crawl back into a canyon to wait for an end that no longer interested me. I settled in orbit around the world where they placed Elias, a green, noisy, wonderfully chaotic human colony called Briar's Landing. I watch from above. I do not interfere. But I am there. Elias grew up. He became a scientist who studies ancient species. He wrote his life's work about cosmic dragons. His colleagues think it is all theory. It is not. Every year, on the anniversary of the day his shuttle came down on Ashevale, he climbs the highest ridge on his world, builds a small fire, and waits. And every year, a shadow crosses the stars, vast and ancient and gentle, and lands beside him. We sit together, the boy and the dragon, the temporary and the eternal. We do not talk much. We do not need to. I have thought about it often, you know, about why humans are different from all the elder races I have watched come and go. The Kavari were brilliant. The Delvani were beautiful. They had power and knowledge, and time beyond measure. And when the universe grew dark around them, they gave up. But humans break, and they grieve, and they sit in the wreckage, and they weep. And then they build a fire. That is why I stay. Not because they are strong, not because they are wise, but because a dying old dragon on a forgotten world told a child to leave, and the child said no. In 12,000 years, no one had ever said no. It saved my life.